this computer.
Oh, good. Thanks.
Yeah.
Have you heard from Joan? Is she on the ground yet? Do you know?
I have no idea.
Yeah.
It sounded like she was going to be
Probably
like
late.
traveling, like as
She's traveling all
Yeah.
day. So yeah, she's probably arriving this. Who knows?
5 people enter the waiting room.
Wonderful. That's great.
Submit them.
Yes.
Oh, I thought Rick Ross said he couldn't make it.
So Fred Bed. Rick Cross. Anne Marie.
Hey there.
Hello there.
Hi, Larry.
Hi.
Get a hold of everybody's names here so I can call on people too. So there's
Cool.
Larry, there's, okay, let's see, Anne Marie, Greg, Rick. Okay. Wonderful. If we could view the gallery, that would be great. We're trying out something new here. It is a webcam at the office. So rather than having the computer right here, we fixed it. So we're looking at a monitor way over there and you can see us, but it means that I have to scrunch up my eyes to see everything.
To see. Well, I'm trying something new too. I have a presentation that I want to be able to share my screen for, and I see there's a button on that I can do that at some point when the time
great.
comes.
Oh, great.
In the meantime, I'm going to mute myself and just wait for things to come in.
Okay, super. We have possibly as many as 30, so we're just going to wait until everybody gets on here. Okay, great. Jane. Chris, yay.
There we go.
Super.
We're connected to my Bluetooth somewhere in my house.
Oh. And Larry, I'm assuming that Lois is with you for her part.
She has her very own office and her very own link.
Hey, so she will be.
And so has she not signed on yet?
Not yet that I can see.
Okay, she
She'll
should
be
be.
awesome.
She should be along shortly. She knows she's up early on the program, so.
Okay. All righty, let's see who else we have. There's Lois, and there's Amy Murphy. Thank you, Amy.
So it looks like we're up to about 17.
Okay. Seeing if I've missed anybody who's on. We're doing good. It's just 6. If you don't mind, I'm going to wait just a couple more minutes.
Testing 1, 2, 3.
Yeah, we should probably wait maybe up to 5.
Yeah, because we've got Brian Mitchell coming on. And
We've got
Kim Armbruster, and let's see who else was that.
There was Bea.
Oh, good. Hi, B.
Hola.
Hey, Kathy, Joe Defors here.
Hi there.
Do you have the ability to screen share when it's my turn?
Yes, we do.
Okay.
We absolutely do. And Larry's going to do the same thing.
Okay, great.
That's super.
I believe Mary just joined.
Oh, good.
So we're up to 22.
Okay.
Some people might be in a bit of a delay because
Yeah, Nicole as well.
I wasn't allowed in until I updated Zoom, and that took a few minutes.
Oh, thank you. We had a difficulty with that a couple of months ago too, so. Thank you for your patience. And isn't it good that we did this by Zoom? Certainly out here in Northport, it's a good thing we did this by Zoom.
Yeah.
I was in Suttons Bay and Lake Leelanau today, and I was driving home about 1:30 from Lake Leelanau, and I thought, I was sorry that we weren't meeting in person, and now I'm not quite so sorry.
I slid and kind of bumped here because the drifts are such that it's just like boing, boing to get down.
204 was terrible.
Was it? Yeah.
Yeah, there was no visibility. I mean, it was blowing like crazy. Yes.
I can report that Marv Spears is helping to shovel out a Home Depot delivery van as we speak in front of my house on M201. So conditions are bad.
Oh my gosh. We had a UPS driver come to our house and say, I can't make it back to the people on the bluffs. Can you deliver? I said, sure, because they kind of know they can leave it at our house. And our nephew, who's got great snow tires, he was so pleased to get to do that because he said, he's from Savannah, Georgia. This is his first real winter. And he said, I love driving in the snow out at the farm, but he just hates driving it on the highway. So he's very pleased to deliver. Oh, good. Rick Foster. Hi, Rick. Okay. Who else was that on there? Just Rick.
Ron, someone named Ron. I'm not certain.
Just trying to make sure we don't miss any of your names here, so we can call on you.
Oh, no.
Okay, we've got Dale Lurch. Wonderful.
Looks like Anne Marie might have had a tech issue,
Okay,
but she'll hop on whenever she can.
okay. Was there somebody else besides Dale up there in the waiting room?
No.
Okay. Okay, that's long enough. 6:04, we're gonna go. Okay, what I'd like to do is I did send you an agenda. We're going to vary it just a little bit because Lois pointed out, Lois Bahle is going to be first up. She's going to talk about that housing readiness and the zoning that they've done work at the county with. I think most people on this call know how long the county has been working on housing in different forms. And so it's very exciting what they've got. I would like to share one thing before we start, and then I'm going to ask all of you to say a quick hi so that if Larry doesn't know you and Lois doesn't know you or whatever, we know who's on the call. Zach, thank you very much for sending through the information on the housing needs assessment. And what Zach shared is that through 2025 in Leelanau County, it looks like we need 668 units to rent and buy. We need 367 to rent and 301 to buy. 83% of the 361 need to be $1,000 or below in rent price. And 50% of the 301 to buy need to be at or below 250,000. So I did a quick, we're 10% of the population of Leelanau County out here, a little bit more than, we're 10.5% in Leelanau Township at 2,134 people. So if we just did a quick back of the napkin thing, we would need 32 rental places at 1,000 or less in Leelanau Township and 16 houses to buy at 250,000 or less in Leelanau Township alone. So we've got something very serious. I do know about 2 houses that are up for sale right now. They're both between 350 and 400,000. That's, as Anne Marie knows very well, is the way it's going in the real estate market. Okay, so For those of you who don't know, Pohai, introduce yourself, please.
I'm the assistant here at the foundation. I've been working in this position since May. I have participated in a couple of the meetings. It's always very enriching. So I'll be taking minutes, and at some point I might speak up a little bit. So yeah, that's all.
Thank you. And I think you all know I'm president of the foundation board. Joan would be here, but she is traveling back from vacation. Christy, would you say a quick hi, introduce yourself, please?
Hi, Christy Fisher. I am treasurer on the Community Foundation Board. I'm also on the Township Planning Commission, and I own Fisher's Happy Hour.
Thank you. We're going to get to know Joe and Larry and Lois in a minute. So Zach, would you introduce yourself next?
Hi, everyone. Yeah, I'm Zach Hillier with Housing North, the Leelanau County Housing Ready Program Director.
Wonderful. Thank you. Barb Conley.
Hi, I'm Barb Conley, live in Northport, retired oncologist on the health board and Northport School Board. And housing is the biggest issue we have.
Thank you. Kim Armbruster.
I'm Kim Armbruster. I'm a trustee on the Leelanau Township Community Foundation Board. I'm on several committees, and I live in Omina, down off Tatch Road.
Thank you, Kim. Rick Foster.
Good evening. My name is Rick Foster. I'm on the foundation board. I'm also on the County Housing Action Committee, and got talked into being on the Brownfield Authority and the Land Bank because that's a potential source for affordable land for housing and sometimes for housing. And those agencies have been supporting a couple major nonprofits building more affordable housing, but none at the moment in Leelanau Township.
Thank you, Rick. Anne Marie.
Mitchell. I am I guess you would call me the facilitator of the Leelanau Township leadership team, and I'm a realtor.
Thank you. Dale.
Hi, Dale Lurch. I live in Northport. I have, over the last few years, been getting very involved locally with Share Care, the Conservancy. I'm in a new 501c3 that is very concerned about finding property where we could potentially place housing. So I'm very interested to hear. Unfortunately, I'm also on the new library board, so I will have to sign off at 7.
Thank you, Dale. Jane? Gail?
Yeah. Hi, I'm Jane Gale. I am a trustee on the village, for the village, and also the trustee representative on the Village Planning Commission.
Thank you. B, Marina?
Hi, I'm Beatriz Moreno, and I am on the community board. I also work for science-based schools with the Spanish-speaking population. I also am the liaison for the 5 surrounding counties for the migrant population.
Thank you, B. And did you say you're on the foundation board? You are.
Yes, I did.
Okay, Greg.
Greg McMorrow, Omina, on the foundation board.
Thank you. Rick?
I think I spoke already.
No, Rick Cross.
I'm Rick Cross. I'm the Leelanau Township Supervisor.
And thank you very much for doing that. Fred? Okay, and you're Fred Budd, you are muted.
Sorry about that. Good, Bud, a trustee on the foundation board.
Wonderful, thank you. Nicole Arbery.
Hi, Northport for 22 years and the chair of the Village Planning Commission.
Wonderful, thank you. Brian Mitchell?
Yeah, Brian Mitchell, Leelanau Township Planning Commission.
Thank you so much. Let's see, this is all flipping around on me. Bridget Hart?
Hi, Bridget Hart. I'm on the Leelanau County Planning Commission. Leelanau Township Planning Commission, excuse me.
Thank you. Amy Murphy?
Hi, everyone. I'm Amy Murphy. I live in Omina. My husband and Kevin and I own New Bohemian Cafe and the Omina Bay Country Store. And I am a consultant working with the Community Foundation to work on a convening of stakeholders around the housing issue.
Thank you so much. Phil Halstead? You may be muted, Phil. Your picture's up.
Sorry, this is Phil, and I am stuck. So I will be calling in as I can. So
Okay.
Phil Halstead from Northport, trying to get up our driveway in a snowstorm.
Oh,
And I
no.
serve on the Housing Advisory Committee.
Thank you, Phil. Sorry you're stuck. Chris McCann?
Hi, Chris McCann, Village of Northport president.
Great, thank you. Okay, so Mary Tonnenberger, I think that's going to grab us.
Yeah. And then we've also got Larry.
You're muted here anyway, Mary. Hi.
Yeah, we're not able to hear anything.
Yeah, so it might be that, who knows? Sorry. Okay, but Mary's there. All right,
We
thank
have,
you all.
Larry as well.
I know we're gonna get all of them.
Okay. Sounds good.
We are. So our three presenters tonight, I'm going to let them introduce themselves as they go. We chose them for the impact meeting because we felt we have more on our board to learn about housing readiness and the zoning at the county. Also, Larry will be talking to us about the Peninsula Housing Community Land Trust. And then Joe Defors is going to talk about where alternative energy fits in with affordable housing. And boy, I learned a lot through a conversation that I didn't know before. Larry had kind of told me it was very important, but I now understand it's more important than ever. So Lois, would you lead us off, please?
I sure will. So I'm Lois Bahle. I live in the village of Suttons Bay. So I've been here a long time and seen a lot of changes. Sometimes you get used to it and sometimes you just think, oh, I wish that hadn't happened. So I have served on the Housing Action Committee since it was formed in 2017, sometimes called the HAC or HAC. And when you hear that, you know what we're talking about. It was formed by the County Commission and it operates under the County Planning Commission. Our staff person is Trudy Gala. Anybody that's worked with Trudy knows that you're in really good hands if you have her as a support staff person. So we had many meetings. First thing we had to do was go and read zoning ordinances from all the various villages and townships to see if anybody had, you know, the words for workforce housing or affordable housing or, you know, any of those keys that you need. And you soon find out that that isn't kind of on everybody's mind. They also kind of get stuck on the idea that affordable housing needs to be a freestanding owner-occupied home and not a rental. So finding locations that would accommodate multiple units of rental are lacking. So one of the first things the Housing Action Committee produced was that housing checklist that you were talking about, and I know it's attached to your agenda. It's been adopted by Housing North and distributed far and wide across the 10-county region. It's not intended for planning commissions to try to, or governmental units to try to accommodate everything that's on that list. It's a guide, you know, and a way to find ways to make it more easy to build housing. let's see, Housing North. If you don't know what Housing North encompasses, it's the 10 county area starting up at Emmett County up at the top. I just have to remember which counties are in that. Goes all the way down to Kalkaska, Manistee County on the lower end. So the reason to have the Housing North involved is that we soon realize that we are small communities. We don't carry a lot of weight when you're talking to the legislature in Lansing or applying for funding, because we're so small. You can't make a big enough noise, and the funds tend to go to the more urban areas downstate. I think that's starting to change. There's much more emphasis in Lansing on needs in our rural areas of Michigan. I was talking with Betsy Kofia earlier today at her meeting, the coffee at the County Commission building. It's so encouraging to have somebody positive who's really moving on some of these things that we need to take action on. So the other thing that we use quite often is that housing needs analysis. And Kathy was quoting figures from that. It's dated 2019, and I believe we're in the midst of starting a survey to update that information. From 2019, I think we're kind of losing ground. We haven't even made a dent in the needs. And it's maybe more emphasis on owner-occupied homes than rentals. I think the balance isn't quite right. So watch for that survey. And the Housing North group hired our housing director, housing ready director. That's Zach Hillier, who introduced himself earlier. Let's see, where was I? So I was listening to the county commission meeting, the committee of the whole meeting for last month, and they were talking about, there was a building committee, building inspectors meeting, and in 2022, the county issued 178 new residential construction permits, 178. Even if they were all for affordable housing, that wouldn't help. So it's quite incredible. The previous year was 184. So we just don't build houses of any kind, or we build really big houses. So let's see. So we're doing 3 duplexes in Maple City, maybe 6 families. We're doing 8 units. Homestretch is working on those on Merrick Road. There's some affordable housing going in on Bugай Road near Elmwood. Kathy also attached the zoning toolkit, that book that looks like this. I saw it at the Housing Summit in Traverse City last fall and grabbed a copy, and we were able to, through the Housing Action Committee, buy enough copies so that every planning commission in the county would get one. So you have a hard copy, even if you'd rather look at it digitally, which is a lot easier. But I mean, it's really got some interesting facts in it, I find. They were talking about household types in Michigan in 2020. Households with no spouse or partner present, 46%. So, and the Suttons Bay Village is doing their update on their master plan. So they've done a housing survey of housing within the village. It's pretty easy in a small community like this. And the average household size is 1.8 people. So we really need small units, not 3 and 4 bedroom houses. Let's see. General information, households are getting older. We know that. Multi-generation households are increasing. You know, we have grandkids living with grandparents because that's the only place they can find to live in Leelanau County. Households are getting smaller. Walkable communities are preferred. And baby boomers want to age in place. So I know that when you try to find a condo to buy in this community that's all on one level. I had a friend from Chicago who worked for Rotary International. So, you know, she had the wherewithal to buy a condo. She couldn't find one that was all on one level. That's crazy. So we have a local and a national crisis. We're not building enough housing anywhere in the country. We need smaller rental units like studio apartments and one bedroom. So having the latitude in your zoning ordinance to build 400 to 475 square foot unit would be good. The general known constraints on housing, they call them the 4 L's: land cost, labor cost, lumber shortage, and legal, or meaning zoning issues. If we need to amend the zoning, and you saw that on the front page of the Enterprise, Larry had requested some zoning changes from the village of Suttons Bay to build some multi-unit rentals, and that got turned down. So, you know, it's back to the drawing board to try to figure out how to get them engaged in this. So there's also a lot of talk about ADUs and short-term rentals. Now, the Housing Action Committee was realizing that it might be the fastest way to add more units in your community is to allow ADUs in all housing districts. If it's allowed by right, you don't have to go through special use permits and a public hearing, which slows everything down. Putting an ADU on an existing parcel, there's no land cost. You may be able to hook into your existing septic drain field system. So it's a win-win situation. But it gets tangled up with, well, we don't want to build more ADUs if just going to be short-term rentals. So recently, you probably read that the village of Suttons Bay did an inventory of all their housing units. They took the condos out. That's kind of a separate issue. But then we have 62 short-term rentals in the village, and the pressures on our housing from people who come in and buy up smaller, moderate-priced homes and convert them to short-term rentals is distressing, to say the least. So the village decided that they would cap the allowable short-term rentals at 45. So not to say that if you have a current license for a short-term rental, you can't operate. They just will let the numbers reduce through normal attrition. The license won't transfer when a structure is sold. So if it's a short-term rental now and the person sells it, it doesn't continue. So that's a way to kind of slow down that pressure. I did hear a realtor talking a bit about in-migration because of climate change. I don't think we've seen much of that, or we haven't heard that term a lot, but I think that could come at us, you know, as more flooding in Florida, forest fires and storms in California, drought. Michigan looks like a good place to live. So that's another pressure coming at us. So I think I've talked enough, and I'll let somebody else carry on from there. Thank you.
Thank you, Lois. And we'll save questions. We think we'll have plenty of time for lots of conversation with presenters. So we'll go straight into Larry Mawby now about community land trust and particularly Peninsula housing and what your thinking is with that.
Okay, thank you. I do have an exciting but short presentation extracted from something I did last summer. So I'm going to click the share screen button and see if it works.
Okay, wonderful.
Host disabled participant screen sharing. Can you turn it on?
Yes, we will change that.
Okay.
One moment.
Oh, I thought he had it all set and ready to go, but that's, you know, it used to be called Murphy's Law. I don't even know if that's around anymore.
All right, try it out, Larry.
Oh, yes. Man. Well, the question is. Cool.
Yes.
Okay. Can everybody see this big thing that says affordable housing in Leelanau, question mark?
I'm seeing lots of nodding heads.
Yes.
Okay, good. I prepared a presentation last summer for the seminars in Leland, and thought it would be useful to extract from that a little bit about what a community land trust is. It's sort of a basic thing before we get into details and have all kinds of questions. And there's more stuff in here that I want to go through that I'm just going to skip through because we already talked about the problems. People want to live here. Employers can't find workers. And when we don't have people who are able to live and work in the community, it's bad for the communities. Here are some numbers from that target market analysis from 2019 that was mentioned a couple times. These are the number of rental and home-owned units that projected that Leelanau County would need by 2025. I highlighted in red the rental levels. This projected that the county needed a little over 300 rental units. It would rent for $1,000 or less, and it needed 150 homes that could sell for $250,000 or less. That hasn't happened. And to exacerbate the problem, when we look at Leelanau County compared to the rest of the state, here's a nice little bar chart that shows the poverty level in Leelanau County. The blue bars are Leelanau County, the green bars are the state of Michigan as a whole. So we have a lower level of poverty than the state as a whole, but we have a substantially higher level of people who are in the ALICE cohort, and ALICE stands for asset limited income constrained employees. These are people who are working here and just barely getting by. We, between the poverty level and the ALICE level, we are slightly higher than the state norm for that. And at the same time, we look at and again, I got to apologize. This is last year's numbers for the highlighted number of $67,330 as the median household income in Leelanau County. It actually went up to $89,400. So the household median income took a large jump in Leelanau County last year and is substantially higher than Michigan's median income. But look at the median value of owner-occupied homes, substantially higher. And there's a critical metric where you take the cost of a home and you divide it by the median income. And the number that you'd like to have is 2.6, that 2.6 years of income would pay for the house. You can see that Michigan is a little higher than the 2.6 we'd like, and Leelanau County is dramatically higher. Skip this. We have 3 organizations that are working in Leelanau County to try to solve the problem. Homestretch, who's been working for a couple of decades at least. We have Habitat for Humanity working for at least the same amount of time. Both of those organizations tend to focus on people who are in the 30 to 80% of area median income range. Habitat for Humanity specifically does. some of the projects that Homestretch is involved with have some units that are aimed for people at the more than 80%, up to 120% of area median income. And then what I'm here to talk about tonight is a community land trust. Peninsula Housing is a community land trust we formed a year and a half ago. And I'm going to tell you very briefly here what a community land trust does. We're slightly different in the way we work than Habitat or Homestretch. Community land trusts separate the ownership of the land from the home. Most community land trusts have historically been landowners and renters of that land to homeowners. It's not as common, but becoming more and more common for community land trusts to also own homes or apartments and be landlords leasing homes and apartments. And that's one of the things that Peninsula Housing is doing. But in the fundamental simple example of what a community land trust does, the homeowner leases the land from the community land trust. Typically around the country, the lease term is 99 years. In Michigan, it's 89 years because of a quirk in the Michigan law. When the homeowner sells the home that they own, a portion of the appreciated value stays with the land. And that is one of the ways that the community land trust keeps that home affordable through successive owners and successive generations. Forget that. Here's an example. I'm going to go through this quite quickly. This is a hypothetical example. Some of the numbers you're going to laugh at because I picked numbers that are probably too low, but the principle remains the same. I'm saying that in Leelanau County, we can find land that costs $20,000 upon which we can build a single family home. I'm also saying that we can build that home on that land for $240,000, a real challenge today. That puts the total cost, land and the home, at $260,000. The community land trust will sell the home typically at a 25% discount to the income qualified buyer. So this $240,000 cost to build home would be discounted by $60,000 and would be sold to the home buyer for $180,000. That would be their total cost of their mortgage because they're not buying the land and they're buying the home at a discount. We, as a community land trust, have then invested $80,000 in that transaction. We'll never get that money back. That'll be there forever. If we look at the national average, people move every 7 years. So we'll use an example of 7 years later, this homeowner is ready to move for whatever reason and wants to sell the home. The home that costs $240,000 to build 7 years later is reappraised, and it turns out, oh, it's increased in value. It's now $300,000 in value, up from the $240,000. So the appreciation of $60,000 is there, but the arrangement that the community land trust and that homeowner has is that the homeowner only gets a portion of that increased value. 25% of that value they get to keep. They also get whatever equity they've built up by making their mortgage payments for 7 years. So it's not like they get nothing. It's not like being a renter where you just walk away with nothing, having paid rents. They have the ability to share in the appreciated value of the home. And then how does the community land trust deal with that home? We now have a total appreciated value. I've said that the home and the land is appreciated to $330,000. The home went from 240 to 300. The land went from 20 to $30,000. So there's a total appreciated value of 330. The building value there is 300. We'll apply a 75% discount to the building value and sell that home to the new homeowner for $225,000. That's substantially more than the 180 that the home sold for the first time around 7 years earlier, but still affordable. And that is very quickly the way that community land trusts work for single-family home ownership. I'm going to stop sharing if I can figure out how to do it. How do I do that? New share? No.
So on the icon that says share screen, there should be a way.
There's a stop share. There, whoa, there we are. Okay, sweet, thank you.
And Barb, we got your question. We'll grab this later.
I've got, and I can provide this in any of a number of forms for folks. What I did want to do is talk a little bit about what Peninsula Housing is doing in Leelanau County, but very briefly, because I want to allow plenty of time for questions. I said that we started a year and a half ago. In September of last year, we purchased a home on the edge of Sutton's Bay, which we are in the process of rehabbing, and we plan to have that available for sale by the summer. We'd like to get a family in that home so their kids can be in school for the fall. We will, following this model, we paid X for the home. We're going to add Y to it in terms of improvements that we make, and we're going to retain the land, and we're going to sell the home for substantially less than X plus Y. So we're pursuing, in that case, we're pursuing the classic community land trust model. Simultaneously, we at the end of December, we purchased a 10-acre parcel, which is again in Sutton's Bay Township, but again adjacent to the village of Sutton's Bay. And that parcel is zoned by the township to permit up to 80 units. Our goal with that will be to develop a substantial number of rental apartments on that property. I don't know how long it'll take us to do that, but that's we're working on that now. We're also looking at acquiring a duplex in Lake Leelanau that is currently rented at below market rates. The landlord that owns that is retiring and wants to make sure that his tenants can stay in the home. So he approached us about purchasing it at market value, but keeping his long-term tenants in there. We're hoping to be able to close on that purchase in the next month or so. So those are some of the things that we are doing right now. We've also had conversations with other folks in other properties in the village of Sutton's Bay, other parcels in Maple City and Empire. And we have a generous contributor who made a contribution to Peninsula Housing last year that is earmarked for Leelanau Township. We have a fund that has been established with funds from a family who wanted to see their funds used to provide affordable housing in Leelanau Township. We don't have a specific project there now, but we do have some seed funding for that. And I think the last thing I want to say before I turn it over to Joe is that one of the things that we really believe as a affordable housing, we're here forever. We anticipate 100 years from now, we're still going to own affordable housing in Leelanau County. And one of the ways that we are working to make that housing stay affordable is by paying close attention to energy efficiency. We know that in the long run, reducing utility bills is the way to keep things affordable. And I'm very encouraged by some of the Inflation Reduction Act things that are coming out, making it look like a no-brainer to do this for us. With that, I'm gonna mute myself and let Joe talk to you for a while. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Larry. Okay, Joe, you're up.
Okay, thanks, Larry. Can everybody hear me okay? I'm never sure how much voice I need to use with these things.
You're very clear.
Okay, thanks so much. So I'm Joe Defors. I think I know about half the people here. We've chatted from time to time. Tonight I represent Leelanau Energy, and we are Northport based, a nonprofit. We educate and advocate for two things, energy efficiency and clean renewable energy. Larry gave me a great segue to my presentation tonight. I'm guessing that most of you are fairly familiar with energy efficiency concepts and clean renewable energy. I don't really need to educate you on that. The reason I was invited here tonight is in just a friendly conversation at the Bohemian Cafe over a couple cups of coffee. Kathy and I got chatting about how these fairly familiar concepts of energy efficiency and renewable energy could actually become tools in the toolkit to be used and applied toward our common goals of achieving affordable housing for our communities. And that's not always something that we're thinking about as using these as tools. So that's what I'd like to take just a few minutes to chat about. In my own preparation for the talk tonight, I just looked up a few basic statistics. And the one that really caught my eye was that depending on who's collecting the data, 75 to 80% of budgets of economically challenged households go to, quote, the necessities of their lives. And necessities are defined as food, shelter, and transportation. No surprises there, of course. Food, shelter, and transportation. Well, food's obvious, of course. Transportation's not a surprise either. In fact, if you read a little bit more deeply, you read that an awful lot of these households would like to be within walkable distances to their jobs and to their communities for the same obvious reasons. So we're left with shelter, and that's really what we're talking about tonight. And with respect to shelter, there are two primary costs or expenses that are involved there. And the first one is either the mortgage or their rent payment that comes up monthly. And the second big one is, as Larry indicated, their utility payment. And what is their utility payment? It's the heat, it's the lights, it's the energy it takes to heat their hot water so the kids can be bathed. It's the heat that's required for the cooking and so forth. So utilities indeed are a huge part of their monthly expenses, and they have to be addressed. The hardest part about thinking about how I was going to organize my talk tonight it was simply how to address this, because there's a number of different ways to go at it. And again, Larry's given me a nice transition. The way I'm going to organize it briefly is I'm going to break the discussion into two broad categories. And the first one's going to be new housing versus existing housing. And with respect to new housing, I'm going to point out that there are just a number of considerations that lend themselves to this discussion. Especially, let's focus on energy efficiency, please. Lois mentioned it earlier. One of the obvious concepts is right sizing, the design concepts. These folks do not need huge spaces to be heated and to live in that are unnecessarily large. The second thing is the envelope itself simply needs to be efficient. If the envelope itself, and that means the outer walls of the building, if it's leaky, and I'm going to show you a slide in just a couple minutes, if it's leaky, then that's energy wasted. And if it's energy wasted, then it's their money going out the doors and windows unnecessarily. And how do we do that? Well, as most of you folks know, we're now using commonly 2x6 walls. We're using higher grades of insulation. We're using better quality windows and other materials in our initial construction. It drives costs up a little bit initially, but accounted for over the lifetime of the housing, it really pencils out, and it's a net cost savings for everybody involved. The next thing that we would ask be considered by the developer or the builder or the designer is that there is an increasingly powerful trend to be considered for all electric housing design. We're trying to eliminate fossil fuels, of course, out of consideration for our planet and our Earth, but there is increasing efficiencies in all things electric that can run our households. Lois and Larry know this if you've toured their house. We've got several other homes in our area on Leelanau that now have moved towards all electric designs. Heat pumps, air to air in particular now, even compared to high efficiency furnaces, can be 300 to 500% more efficient for home heating. Hot water heating can be similarly efficient. Stovetop cooking you've been reading about of late is not only more efficient in terms of dollars spent, but we now know, actually, we've known it for a long time, but the gas industry didn't want to admit it, that it's also healthier for your children and your family than gas heating, etc. So there are lots of ways, if we can be proactive up front with building design, working with architects, working with our designers and our developers, we can be proactive about building design and so forth and build in these efficiencies. The good news is if this is done initially at the start, then we can enjoy these efficiencies for the lifetime of these structures. And modern structures last decades, 100 years or more. And so the efficiencies are built in for that period of time. The bad news is, and I think we all know this intuitively, is that new housing stock is a minority of the housing stock in our communities. But that, I still wanted to start there because we have to be optimistic, and that's where we need to begin. I do want to also point out that there's a huge educational component here. Studies have been done in the United States in particular, as compared with Europe, for instance, with the heating systems. These technologies, the heat pump technologies, have been around in Europe for many years, and they've been extremely successful and well understood there. In America, our heating contractors are not nearly as familiar with the technologies. Unfortunately, what is happening here is you don't generally opt to simply spend several $1,000s to put a new furnace in on a whim. Most people wait until the moment that their heating plant has gone out, and then it becomes a crisis. Then they make a 911 call to their local contractor. And if he's not familiar with these new technologies, they're not going to be recommending these modern technologies. So we've recognized in the United States that there's a huge educational component necessary working with the contractor industry. I'm going to jump over to existing housing, and then I'm going to show you about 6 brief slides. Existing housing is really, I think, the more important topic because, as we said, it's the majority of the housing that we have to deal with. And it, by all measures, is the tougher of the topics to be dealt with. Here, once again, the focus has to be on energy efficiency. There are no easy broad brush solutions because the housing comes in all different shapes, all different sizes, all different ages. The same concepts apply. We have to tighten up the building envelope. We have to apply new insulation technologies, new windows, new doors, etc. There are ways to measure where the leakages occur, and I'm going to move into the slides in a moment. And actually, this is a good time to move into the slides because there are a couple programs that are going to help us with the expenses of these things. So whomever is in charge of that, if I could share my screen, please.
You should be able to.
Okay, yep. Are you seeing it?
We are. Yeah.
Oh, great. Okay. Okay, that's just a placeholder. Okay, this is an infrared photo of just an average house, and it's just a good starting point. Red in this photo indicates where heat is being lost from a building. And blue are the better places in the building where heat is not being lost. Whoops. Yellow is moderate heat loss. You can see, and this is quite typical, most heat is lost through the roof. That's because heat rises and the typical building does not have enough insulation in its roof. And then here's a drawing that gives you, again, averages. 25% through the roof, 10% through windows. You can read, I don't have to read them all to you. The numbers that we generally share say that the average house loses 30% of the energy it pays for out the doors and windows and roof, etc. 30%. Now think about our economically challenged households. They're probably not living in average quality housing. And that tells you that probably more than 30% of their dollars, those hard-earned dollars that they're investing in their utilities, are literally going out their doors and windows. So anything we can do to tighten up these spaces is extremely well spent. Simple examples of the things we can do: adding insulation, not extremely difficult. New doors and windows, easily done. Lighting alone can save 10% of an electrical bill. New LED lighting lasts up to 25 years. It's just a wonderfully good investment. Programmable thermostats, excuse me, cost under $50 easily. Lots of our utilities give them away. Just all of these things are no-brainers. This is a slide to remind me. Larry mentioned this earlier. Now, there's two great things that are happening right now. One, Larry mentioned the Inflation Reduction Act. That's that huge sum of money that came down from the federal government under President Biden in 2022. It actually has been broken up into over 100 different programs, and it's very difficult to generalize because there are different programs for the private sector, for the nonprofit sector, for individual households, for low-income households, for contractors, etc. But the one most of us have heard about is this program that you see in this particular slide. It has been rolled out by the federal government. The money has not yet arrived at the state of Michigan, and therefore it is not yet being distributed, but it will be through EGLE, the Department of Energy, Great Lakes and Environment. This is the summation of it. Some of the details may change because the state of Michigan will have some discretion over how it spends the money. But take a look at these things. Here's some of the things that I mentioned. Heat pump hot water heaters, up to $1,750 rebate. Home insulation doors and windows, up to $1,600 rebates. Heat pump heating, up to $8,000 rebates. Some homes will need electrical upgrades, up to $4,000 rebates. So on and on and on. These rebates can add up to $14,000 per housing unit. The intriguing thing is, the answer is yes, they can apply even to multiple housing units, multiple housing, if more than 50% is dedicated to low-income individuals. So this particular program is all good news, and we should be watching for it. The state of Michigan isn't ready yet to completely announce it, but this is huge. $14,000 per household can just make fantastic differences. As we understand it today, and I've been in touch with some of our state legislators, the only unfortunate aspect of this program, it would appear, is that it is not yet going to be rolled out to a developer who is anticipating a new low-income housing project. And that would be unfortunate. We've been in touch with our legislators. Again, the state will have some discretion in how it interprets the program, and we're asking them to have some consideration over that. The other thing I want to point out is there are actually some wonderful programs that are already in place. Some of you may have an awareness of these. One of them is around us as we speak. It's by these great folks, the Northwest Michigan Community Action Agency. It's an organization that distributes, I think it's all federal funding. I could be wrong. It might be some state funding as well. They do several different programs, but among those programs is a weatherization program. They serve several different counties, including Leelanau. Leelanau Energy was lucky enough to run into these folks last year. And I'll tell you about a program we did with them. But it was interesting to me. We obviously had this interest in working with low-income households and assisting them with weatherization. We thought we were going to have to build a program of our own, but indeed these folks had something already up and running. They had the funds in place. They had a methodology in place that identified and qualified low-income households. And by the way, the definition is less than twice the federal poverty level. So it's a pretty generous definition. And it was interesting to me, they told us of all the counties that they serve, and I think it was 5 or more counties. They said they were most frustrated with Leelanau County. They said they believed that there was a greater need here, and they were frustrated that they didn't have a better penetration in Leelanau County. Our promise back to them was, in meetings just like tonight, we would do everything we can to spread the word about their opportunity, their program. So I wanted to tell you about this program in particular. It is available around the entire county. All you need to do is give them a buzz. And if you can't find them, I'll help you get a hold of me. And the last thing I want to tell you about is a great program. Rick Cross is in the audience. We did a collaboration between Leelanau Township, that those last folks, Northwest Michigan Community Action Agency, and Cherryland Electric Cooperative, that really is a great summation of everything I've been telling you about. It brings it all together. Using some of the ARPA funds that came down from the federal government last year to Leelanau Township, we first went to the Northwest Michigan Community Action Agency folks, and we asked them if we could plug into their program if we identified income qualifying households in Leelanau Township. Could we put our folks in the queue for weatherization? And they said yes, they would love it. As soon as folks popped out of that queue, we created a new line for folks to join at Cherryland Electric Cooperative. And the photo here is a picture of a community solar array at Cherryland Electric Cooperative up down in Grawn. And community solar is a concept where you can lease one or more solar panel on this array, and the dollar value of the energy made from those solar panels is sent back to the deserving and qualifying household. So what happened here is we first have identified low-income households who qualified. We tightened up the space that they lived in. And by the way, they can be either homeowners or renters. So their homes suddenly became less leaky and more energy efficient at no cost to them. Then, through the generosity of Leelanau Township, we leased 10 solar panels off of this array, and all the energy, the value of the energy created by those 10 solar panels is credited back against the bill to those households each month for the next 15 years. So I want to end my talk with this program as an example, because it really brings all of these concepts together. It's a community partnership where we've taken local money and a local initiative. We're tightening up the space these folks live in. We're using clean energy to reduce their electric bills and hopefully stabilizing these households in our communities. That's all I have. I wasn't watching the clock. I hope I didn't take too much time. Thank you.
You did beautifully. Thank you, Joe. Okay, because there are so many of us, I'm going to simply start off by calling off a name, and I'll go down the list as I took it, and have you ask any of our presenters questions or make a comment. Fred, would you lead off? Fred Budd?
Yeah, all this is really good stuff. I think the studies that are coming up to document the requirements, especially on the low income side over this next spring and summer, will help us determine, just how many units from a real requirement standpoint are going to need to be done. So I'm hoping we confirm the community in general can confirm those hard requirements and then really start going after them. The only thing as you were talking about the construction and Joe on the heating, and you're tightening up houses. Over the years, I've read a few articles as we started to insulate houses. A lot of folks, when that started, and you seal them up tight, kind of forgot about fresh air. A lot of people are buying heat pumps on the mini split side, so they put little units in each of their rooms, but it's not a forced air system and it doesn't bring fresh air in. So I was wondering if anybody is working with the folks, the construction folks, and looking at getting air into the house. It turns out if you don't do that properly, families get sick and they don't even realize what's causing the problems. So is there any, that's a part of your construction and moving forward? Because I know heat pumps, you can have forced air heat pumps, and then you can have units that bring fresh air in, and it's really, really tight house you're building. Is that a problem, or is that something that needs to be emphasized?
Fred, you're right, that those technologies, I don't think there's a single simple answer to that. Those technologies, as you know, have evolved over time. A decade or two ago, you're right, all the emphasis was on tightening the house, and there was no consideration given to bringing in fresh air. The modern air-to-air heat pumps, especially the whole house systems that are ducted, now have very sophisticated systems that have balanced air being brought in that also is heated through a heat pump system. So it's fresh air, but it's preheated, and the whole system is balanced and healthy and so forth. I think, to your question, I think the trick is finding a contractor who's up on the technologies and so forth.
A good example is that our house in town, which we had to gut, it's a 100-and-some-year-old house, and we tightened it up and literally insulated everything, and it became a very, very tight house. And I was reading some of these articles this time, and they have units and it's all forced air down there. I bought a unit called a Renew Air System. It's a small unit, goes into your furnace room, and it pulls in fresh air, and it also exhausts air out of the house. They run usually a couple $1,000s on that size of house, but it makes a huge difference getting fresh air into the house. But I haven't been on top of it for about 10 or 12 years, but I still hear and see people putting in mini splits, heat pump mini splits in rooms, and tightening their houses up, but not having fresh air in.
Yeah.
So it's something that's got to be considered when you're building housing for families, that you have fresh air.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you, Fred. Rick Cross.
I had to change everything around. It was a great presentation and I appreciate it. As I go to work every day, I definitely need housing. We need apartments. Places where people would not have to commit to buying a house. I think is the greatest need that I see with the people that I work and come in contact with every day. But I think the many approaches are probably better than trying to organize one unified approach. And I support the many approaches that are going on. I think we've got to celebrate every success We know we have a long way to go, but every time something good happens, we should be talking about it. And as far as I'm fascinated by the contractors, that there are sophisticated and unsophisticated contractors, Joe. It would really help if a lot of us knew who they were, where to go. When we find contractors that are really doing a good job keeping up with the technology, rewarding them, letting people know who they are, or even shaming if we need to, into getting us as advanced as Scandinavia is, for example, in other parts of Europe. So again, thanks very much for the presentation.
Thank you, Rick. Anne Marie?
Here I am in the
Okay.
dark. Yeah, it was a fantastic presentation on all parts. I have just a quick question for Larry. And the example that you gave us of the house in the village that you are renovating for a family, how are you qualifying potential applicants in that process?
Good question. We have a number of things that we ask people who are interested in purchasing the home to apply. We need to know some financial information from them, because what we are trying to do is to make sure that we are selling the home to people who have sufficient income to pay for it, but not so much income that they don't need the discount that we're offering. We qualify them. We qualify them by limiting the high end income. Anybody that's buying a house from Peninsula Housing needs to get a mortgage from a financial institution, and those people qualify at the other end. They're not going to, unless they're making enough money, they're not going to be able to get a mortgage. So we've got both ends of the spectrum covered, and we work with a Northwest Michigan Community Action Agency, who is a HUD certified credit counselor. They offer credit counseling, and we will require anybody purchasing a home from us or becoming a tenant of any homes or apartments that we have for rent, that they go through this credit counseling course. And we, in the case of the, I'm going to get into the weeds here pretty quickly. We have, for homeowners, we have the right to inspect the home to make sure that they're maintaining it appropriately, and we have a nominal ground lease monthly payment that allows us to keep in touch with the folks all the time, so that we can see if they're starting to get into financial difficulties. We can help direct them to support services. And while I got them, I'm going to answer Barb Conley's chat question, which was, what if the property depreciates? Because my example was this cheery one that showed how the property increases in value. Well, if the property depreciates, that's not good for anybody. If the reason that it depreciates is because of general economic conditions, it's bad. If it depreciates because the homeowner let it run down, that's on us, because we are supposed to be monitoring that and making sure that they do the necessary maintenance. So yeah, I mean, I can go into details about how that would all work, but depreciating value of real estate is never a good thing.
So Greg McMurrow.
Useful information. But I don't have any specific questions.
Thank you, Greg. Christy Fisher.
I agree with Greg. It's useful, and I think I feel a little bit more hopeful actually hearing some of what's going on, and I really appreciated the community land bank education from Larry, but no questions.
Thank you, Christy. Phil Halstead.
I thank you. I mean, again, commend you guys for what you're doing in the direction, Larry, that you've been able to push forward with on this concept. What would be something that create a step function in advancement? I mean, is it money? How much money is it? Is it community effort? What effort do you need? So you've made great progress, but what would you ask people to consider to make a 10x increase in a short amount of time, as an example? Or is it just not possible?
Well, we haven't actually done anything yet. Remember, we're in the hopeful phase. I can assure you that to achieve the express need, to satisfy the need for affordable housing in the county in general or in Leelanau Township is going to take a huge amount of effort. I've done the math for the county as a whole, and if you look at what it costs to buy land and build homes, or buy land and build apartments, and then what you can sell the homes for or rent the apartments for, and the difference that you've got to figure out a way to fund for. I mentioned that in this case of this simple example of a home, it was $80,000 that the Community Land Trust had to invest in there. If you extrapolate that to the whole county, we need, as a community, we need to figure out a way to invest $50 to $80 million to solve the problem in Leelanau County today. That's more money than I imagine we can do. And so I don't think we have the solution. I think we would like, as Peninsula Housing, we would like people to step up and if they're financially able to make financial contributions to us. The house that we're rehabbing in Sutton's Bay, we have a couple of individuals who are professional painters who have offered time and are in their off hours doing the painting. So there's opportunities for, and we've gotten money from church groups and so on. There's a lot of ways people can help. One of the things that I think the group that's on this Zoom meeting can take away is be in front of your township planning commission, your township board, your village planning commission, and your village council, and support the appropriate activities that make it easier or even possible for affordable housing to be built in the Leelanau Township and Northport community. Elected and appointed officials need to hear from people that this is a problem and that proposed solutions can work for the community. So being local advocates is a no cost other than your time and frustration approach. Thank you.
Thank you. Jane Gale.
Yeah, that actually was a perfect tie-in, Larry, because I think that the village Planning Commission has been trying to do a lot of the right things based on what was in the toolkit. And we're looking to make it easier to build smaller footprints, smaller lots, a lot of those things. And we do hear from members of the public, many of them who are not particularly interested in having workforce housing next to them. And I think that having help with creating positive messages, and this is where we're looking to, the toolkit had some ideas. We looked to Zach, we looked to the Housing Action Committee to help support us, but we also look to the other people on this call who, when we have an opportunity to maybe work with the very generous Leelanau Township donor to Peninsula Housing at locating a site where we might be able to put not a huge apartment complex in a residential district, but rather than, maybe we have an opportunity to put 4 or 6 townhouses that would blend in with the community. We need to have support from the people on this call telling us, yes, in my backyard, not in my backyard.
Great. Thank you, Jane. Chris McCann?
Yeah, thanks everybody for the information and presentation. I guess for Larry, with the community land trust so far, have all your purchases been, or you're buying land from private owners? Have you had any action with local municipalities if they have land? Also, do you, as a community land trust, are you able to access like brownfield funds and stuff like that for the redevelopment of properties and things like that? I guess right now would be a couple of my questions.
Okay, yeah, fine. All of the properties that Peninsula Housing has purchased came from private individuals. And I've got to confess, we did all those purchases in the last quarter of last year with generous bridge loans from individuals that need to be repaid. So while our balance sheet looks good because these people gave us loans without taking any security interest, we do have to repay those loans. So we've looked at and worked with the county land bank has a few tax foreclosed properties. Don't think any of them are really suitable for affordable housing. We do have, with regard to your question about a brownfield and land bank, yes, with the regard to the potential development of a 10-acre parcel, we will definitely be working with the Brownfield Authority and the land bank. We would hope that we would have the township and the county be willing to participate in a TIF district that would help us in our scoring with MISHDA to get access to state and federal dollars, and also help us recover some of the infrastructure costs that we will have to put into that. So yeah, we can work with that. Leelanau County is one of the counties in the state that actually has its own land bank and has had for about 20 years, which is really good. There are many counties that don't have that opportunity.
Wonderful. Thank you. Zach Hilliard?
Well, thanks, everyone. Great information. I was thinking about the energy efficiency and as it relates to, affordable housing. And I had, in my previous position, I had the unenviable task of doing the utility allowance schedules for a public housing agency. And just, looking at those and, utility allowances under certain programs, utilities have to be deducted from the rent that's collected depending on the funding source. So energy efficiency goes right into the affordability equation and the long-term sustainability, financial sustainability for certain housing units. And it was interesting to see some units that were, gas, heated with gas, and the utility allowances $100 and some. So subtract that, if the tenant was responsible for that payment. And then we had some newer homes, townhomes with heat pumps, and they're much lower utility allowances. So that was more rent coming in to help, with the sustainability of the program. So I really appreciated the kind of discussions tonight and tying those two together.
Thank you. Amy Murphy?
I think that thank you to everyone for the presentations and to everyone for your great questions. I think I have more of a comment than a question, which is that, and Phil just alluded to this in the chat as well. I think as a township, we need to be thinking about who is the housing need for that we are focused on right now. Lois's presentation kind of elevated that there is a housing shortage nationwide, and that's affecting everybody. It's affecting people who have enough money to buy a house, but there just isn't a house available. And it's affecting people who are in financial circumstances that make purchasing a home in Leelanau Township out of their reach. As an employer, of course, I am interested in workforce housing. And I think some of the data that we are starting to see and talk about is so generalized that it's addressing that general housing need more so than it's addressing the span of workforce and affordable housing. So I think we, as a community, we need to start thinking about who is it that we're focusing on right now. What are the steps we can take to address that particular housing need, which doesn't mean that the other housing needs are any more or less important. It's just where we need to focus. And then to look at the information that we're sharing within the context of that particular audience. Because when we say in Leelanau County, the average household size is 1.8 people, none of my employees fall into that category. They all need 3-bedroom homes. And so, and I don't know, like one of the questions that I wrote down was, what do we know about the people who fall into that category of affordable and workforce housing, the ALICE plus poverty, or maybe even a little bit above the ALICE group? What is the size of their household? How are there 2 parents? Is it a single parent and 2 kids? Like, just trying to think about, do we have information about that particular group of people that we can share that's a little bit more specific? And the median income was another one that kind of struck me. You feel like, oh wow, our median income went up. That's awesome. I know as an employer, the incomes of my employees did not increase by anything near that percentage in the last year. And I think that we're seeing those numbers because we had so many remote workers moving to Leelanau County and earning their paychecks in wherever else they live. And so their incomes are starting to figure into our median income, whereas, I don't know that the income of that group of affordable and workforce housing has really changed in the last few years. So just a few thoughts on the data and some curiosity about what other information might we be able to track down as we start talking about this with our community, to give them information that is specific and relevant to the particular focus that we are working on. Thank you,
Amy. Yeah, thank you. I do want to say one quick thing. Thank you, Zach, for the good information you gave me earlier, and I'm going to find some way to share it. But I think that we all should be aware there's an employer survey out there. And I'm so hopeful that the employer survey will help to uncover some of what Amy is talking about, which is it looks different from an employer standpoint than it may from a general community standpoint. Brian Mitchell.
Yeah, I thought it was good discussion. Appreciated Joe's comments because when you're spending 70% of your gross income on housing, food, transportation, obviously you're in the group for high costs, and he's right. You're not usually living in, generally speaking, you're not living in the newest house, the most efficient. The people that can least afford it are the ones getting straddled probably with the highest percentage of overall utility. Land bank, I knew about land banks, but obviously learned a lot more detail how they continue and the transaction for the first owner and how it tries to continue to keep that entry level pricing available as the economy hopefully appreciates things. I thought about also employer here in Leelanau Township. My employee makeup actually does kind of fit. I did my group and we were at 1.7, so that was interesting. On the whether you have employees that live as singles or whether they're a family of 5, I think one of the things, you don't have to have 3,000 square feet to have a residence with 4 individuals living in it. And I thought Larry's comment about a goal of 2.6 of median income to housing value, and no doubt Leelanau County is not even close to that. And you can further take the comments that, well, that median income has even escalated because of some change with some remote work type people that have entered our community in the last couple of years. So maybe our median income is, maybe that number is really closer to 5 based on who was here 2 years ago. So I think those are all good numbers to have because as you try to push through, at least on the public side, the zoning side of quite honestly, multi-resident housing on a particular lot or space, which is to me is a big part of the answer if you're going to create rents in that $1,000 and under category. That seems to be the hardest pushback that I've seen over 5 to 10 years, is that there's just a little bit of a stigma and usually when these opportunities, whether they come to fruition or just are conceptual, you do get a lot of community members that would be close to the project that are uncomfortable and would really like to just continue to see larger homes on the 10 acres next to their 10 acres in Leelanau Township. And so, real data points help show that the health of the community, it would be much better if and wherever it gets created, there is going to be an element of people that are unhappy. And I don't know what to say. That's just the way it's going to be. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian. That was such a great summary. Kim Armbruster.
This has been very educational, very interesting. I learned quite a lot tonight, and I can't think of anything more insightful than it's been said by a number of other people. I appreciate all the time and effort that went into setting this up and getting the speakers lined up and them taking the time to do this. So it's been very valuable to me, and I'm sure to everyone else on this call. I learned a lot.
Thank you, Kim. Mary Tannenberger.
I don't believe she's on the call.
Oh, she was having trouble with her connection. Nicole Arbery.
There we go. First of all, I'd like to thank Kathy and the foundation for organizing this gathering tonight, and the presenters for taking your time. Topics I've heard a number of times, but learn more each and every time. And of course, the questions added just a whole nother dimension, and I won't go into any of them. I do think Rick Cross early on said, I think we just have to continue approaching this from so many different angles. I can speak for as a chair of the planning commission in the village. You may or may not know that we are in the process of working on our zoning amendments and hoping to bring those to the village council. Obviously, it'll be their decision, and of course, after the public hearing. And so, as Jane said, we'd love to have all of the participants joining us, because there are some things that we have in there, and I can tell you, people sitting around the table looking at ADUs and a smaller, allowing smaller home sizes and footprints, and we'll need that support from the community when these things come to the table. But again, just thank you very much, and nothing specific that hasn't been asked already. So thank you.
Thank you. Rick Foster.
I think I'm not muted now. Thank you for the organization of this. I think it's good to have people like Larry and who can tell us about one of the potential strong means of providing housing in an affordable manner. And I think that we need to find more means of doing that. But community land trusts have been the most successful means of doing that in much of the state already. And I'm very glad that we have at least one of those started in our county now. Hopefully they will grow into Leelanau Township and be more locally helpful to us than they can be. But even having a place for workers to live in Suttons Bay Township is a lot closer than having somebody working at Tom's coming from Kingsley. So thank you all, and thank you for our speakers. And there are a lot of good points that were brought out tonight.
Thank you, Rick. Barb Conley.
Thanks, Kathy, and the whole group for pulling this together and trying to start to see where we might want to go up here in Leelanau Township. But I was just wondering, and maybe people have done this, but is there a compilation somewhere of parcels that are able to be built on, whether or not they're owned publicly or privately? And, I've been thinking through this whole conversation, how can we incentivize some of our neighbors who maybe have these parcels to participate in generating workforce housing? Is there some kind of incentive that can be offered to people who are, they have parcels that haven't been built on for years and years and years, but they might be good for housing? How can we incentivize them to do that? And we probably have to talk to them to understand that. And I will just mention that, in Northport, I know of at least 2 dwellings that would fit these small house concepts that are already there. They may be quite leaky, Joe, but they are existing already. And so, they get accepted in the neighborhood. So I think, if people, maybe we need a publicity campaign to get those people who have these parcels to understand that, to have a vital township, village, county, we need all types of people in all ages, and we're losing a good parcel of them.
Thank you, Barb. I didn't pick up on a couple of people who either came late or whatever, so I'd like to see Gina Harder. Are you back on?
She's not. She's put in the chat that she's had to jump off.
I think she's back.
Actually, I'm still here, but my video is horrible, and so I don't know if you can hear me because my audio is also bad. I don't have any specific questions. I would just thank Kathy and the organizers for putting this together, and Larry and Joe, the information that you brought, extremely important and helpful. And I don't have anything in addition to what others have said, but you know, some of the thoughts, I think Amy brought this up about workforce. How do we ensure if we build it, that whomever lives there, wouldn't it really be nice if they worked in Leelanau County or Leelanau Township as well? Is there any way of assuring or incentivizing builders or somehow getting workers in these homes or apartments? Anybody have ideas on that?
You want, I can answer from the perspective of a community land trust. Typically, community land trusts require that the person who's buying the home from them or renting an apartment live there full-time. Sometimes they're able to be gone for a month or two, but they have to work, they live there full-time. Typically, it's a challenge to differentiate between people who are working and people who are retired, and there are some legal reasons that you don't want to walk that line. But there are provisions that are legally enforceable that say that you have to be employed in the community, and the community can be defined by what you want. Could be like you have to work in Leelanau County, you have to work in Leelanau Township. That's usually okay. But yes, the concern is to make sure that the people that you're providing the housing for are getting the housing, and that it's not going to somebody who really doesn't need it.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks,
Larry.
Yeah, gosh, Larry, thank you. Christy Hallett, are you on? I may have thought it was Christy Fisher when I saw your name earlier.
I'm here.
Good.
Thank you for putting this together, and thanks for all the information, Larry, Lois, and Joe. I don't really have any questions, but I sure wish we could solve it. But I'm grateful that you are all working towards it, and thanks.
Thank you, Christy. Kevin Murphy, I see that you've joined us. Do you have something to say?
Kathy, I always have something to say. Yeah, I mean, I just came in for the last 10 minutes or so, so I wasn't here for the vast majority of the presentation, so I'll keep it brief. But one anecdote that I thought was worth sharing, as people are thinking about, you know, I think Barb Conley and Amy and somebody else mentioned sort of the PR angle of trying to sell the importance of affordable and workforce housing to win over, you know, the NIMBYism of, you know, people not wanting whatever that seems like it might mean to them to be in their backyard. We have our house in Northport, you know, we're living in the house in Omina now. And so we have rented out our house in Northport to an employee who is moving out at the end of this month. And so we have kind of put the feelers out in the community to find a new tenant for it. And my thought was, because we don't immediately have an employee right now that is in need of a house, I wanted to look to other kind of important to the community institutions where there might be people in need of housing. So I sent a note to Neil Weatherby at the school and to Casey Petts at Sutton's Bay Schools. And I talked to Hugh Cook because I know that the EMTs and firefighters, we've lost a couple people in the last few years because they have not been able to have a place to live. And I think that many of the people in the community who have a predisposition to believe that workforce housing and affordable housing is somehow, I don't know, bad or a handout or brings the wrong element to town. I think it would be very surprised to learn that our local EMTs in Leelanau Township have an average commute, and I don't know if Hugh's on this call, but he could back me up on this. They have an average commute of about 200 miles. We have EMTs serving our community that commute from Detroit, from Midland, from Grand Rapids, that are the people that answer 911 calls in our community. And when I heard that, as a guy who I feel like has a pretty good finger on the pulse of what's going on in our community, I was jaw on the floor. So if there's any concern about whether the need is real and whether having this kind of housing in our community would do that there's not a need that can be filled amongst people that really serve our community, that data point alone, I think, is enough to make people maybe reconsider their mindset on this.
Wonderful. Thank you, Kevin. Okay, Pohai, I'm going to ask you if you've got anything.
Yeah, sure. I will agree with, a lot of people here. Wonderful information, the presentations, especially looking at the energy and the utility side of things. I do know a handful of people, not just here in the township, but throughout the county, who work extra jobs or seek out overtime work because their energy bills are so high. So that's a really important aspect of all of this that I think maybe goes under the radar sometimes. Since we are running out of time, I should keep it brief. I suppose my one real pressing question is for Lois. You had mentioned that the real estate sales, I think, for the past year in the county were like 170, 180, something like that. I know that houses and selling houses is just one part of, the overall picture of trying to have more housing for people. But I guess my pressing question is, do we have like a percentage, a concrete number where we know like how far off the track we are? Like, are we 20% there? Are we 10%? Like, how far away are we from achieving that goal?
So when I was giving you numbers, I was giving you building permits that were issued on new construction. And I was just, it was, things come past me when I'm listening to meetings and I go, wow, we only issued 178 building permits for all of Leelanau County for new construction last year. Amazing. So, if you know that the demand keeps growing and the 2019 needs assessment said we needed like 650 units, we're just losing ground. We're not even making a dent in the problem. Anyway, I don't have a real specific answer for your, doing a total housing inventory of the community, and certainly in our smaller communities where you kind of got a defined boundary, it's pretty easy to do. How many housing units are there in Northport? How many of them are year-round, owner occupied, just seasonally? Anyway, I have a lot of thoughts from the questions that you were asking. I've talked to Habitat and on the energy issue and said, when you're building affordable housing, think about where your ridgeline is so that your ridgeline would be oriented east and west. And in our latitude, a 10-12 roof pitch is more efficient for solar panels on a roof. So, it's adjustments in the way you build a roof pitch makes sense. For Fred Budd, if you want to take a look at what an ERV looks like in an installation, just give us a call. We'll give you a tour of the house. What else? We've also, in the Housing Action Committee, looked in something called the Aspen-Pritkin model. Aspen, Colorado has extreme problems with finding workforce housing, of course, because the cost is accelerated by people that want to vacation there. So in that model, anyone applying for workforce housing had to be employed by at least 10 months, and they also could not own any other property in the area. So they wouldn't
qualify if they were renting out their house to somebody and using it for a ski resort and moving into a cheaper place to live. That didn't work. We looked at, Larry and I went to Mackinac Island, and they have a community land trust on the island that's building workforce housing, and in their inventory, they discovered what they needed were essential workers, like the EMTs. So they needed somebody to run the water system. They had a teacher that was commuting from the mainland, police service on the island. That's the kind of housing they were building for. They built 12, and the second 12 were in construction. And the woman that was running the program said that she couldn't start qualifying people. She had 24 applicants for 12 units, and she had to wait until she was so many months out from actually being complete before she could start qualifying people. What a way to live. You know, you could kind of see the possibility of housing, but you wouldn't know if you were going to qualify to even get it. Just painful. Yeah. The other thing I saw when we were at the housing summit in Defors City, there was a company or a group from Ann Arbor, and they had something called Pattern Book Homes. And they had one duplex. It was a stacked unit. So it was a 900 square foot on the first floor, stacked with another 900 square foot unit on the top. And they were 2 bedrooms at least, I believe. They had made sure that there was a defined entrance for each one. So it didn't look like you were going into a duplex. It looks like you're going into a single family home. So one in the front and the one on the side actually was a ramped entrance. So they were thinking about barrier free, or, you know, ADU, or yes, handicap accessible house. Anyway, I see a lot of interesting stuff. We spent time talking to a guy who was trying to figure out how to build modular construction. So you'd build your house inside of a warehouse. It's a much better way to construct. It's more accurate. You don't get slowed down for rain. Things don't get wet and swell and distort. And then so if you think about housing and your own homes, you could kind of break everything up into little boxes. So you build this box, that's the living room, kitchen area, another box that's a bedroom, and all those boxes are constructed in a factory and put together with a much better quality of construction and maybe more cost effective. So there, just spouting out more stuff. Thank you.
Thank you. I think what we're learning is that there's more to know than we can possibly know in a short period of time. And one thing I'm kind of doing a takeaway from here is how in our own community, we are not going to move this very far if we don't have people who will show up to when the township and the village have got to be making decisions, who do want to see affordable employer or workforce or whatever housing move ahead. So one thing I'm going to take away is that maybe one thing the foundation can do is try to keep an eye on what's going on and put out to all of you who came to this, and as we find other people, maybe you also do it, saying, hey, the village is looking at this, the township is looking at that. This might be a meeting to write something or to show up and speak about affordable housing. So, so kind of think about that. I will tell you, I have learned, certainly for the township, it's a lot easier for them if they get your opinions on things in advance in writing, because then everyone gets a chance to read it before they start talking about it. I don't know if that works as well at the village, but I think we do all need, if we care about affordable housing, we've got to start learning how to be advocates and find out how to advocate in a way that helps people. Jane Gale, I have a feeling you have a last statement.
Well, I don't want to preempt the village president, but the village as well. If you put things in email, in writing, so that everyone has a chance to read it, we really appreciate knowing positions before we go into a meeting. We still welcome public comment, of course, but having something that everyone has a chance to read and think about before a meeting is extremely valuable.
Thank you. So I think with that, unless somebody's got something they really have to say, we can say we've had a nice 2 hours and we're done for tonight.
Hey, Kathy.
Yes, Gina.
Thank you. It is me. I was just going to say, I started to type it, March 9th at 6:30 p.m. The Township Planning Commission, we will have Zach at our meeting, and we're going to be talking about ADUs and ordinances that are beneficial for affordable housing and those that are prohibitive, things like that. So if people want to come and make comments or listen and make comments afterward, that's an opportunity. So that's March 9th, Thursday at 6:30 p.m.
6:30. Thank you so much.
Will that meeting be Zoom?
Yes, always.
Okay.
And live. But
A quick question, since we have planning commission folks here, is the joint meeting still as scheduled, or has that gotten pushed back?
so far, nothing's changed with that.
Yep.
Yeah, it's
We're all jumping in.
23rd.
That's right. March 23rd.
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any others? All right, thank you all. It was just great to see you all. Bye.
Thanks, Kathy.
Thanks, everybody.
Yeah. I wish we'd had time.